This is my presentation for Critical Infrastructures. It's called Policing in the UK, Advancing the Case for Police Abolition. So this is an overview of my project. In an era marked by an increased scrutiny and growing demand for accountability, I'm interested in researching policing statistics within the UK and understanding their implications within the broader context of our current climate. This project is driven by a desire for social justice and equitable systems, which, alongside my own awareness of the out of date and prejudiced infrastructure of policing within the UK, has led me to question the effectiveness and fairness of our existing policing practices. As we navigate through a time of heightened awareness surrounding systemic issues, I'm compelled to shed light on the realities of police conduct, identify patterns of concern, and advocate for meaningful reform. By analysing and presenting comprehensive data on police complaints in an easy to understand way, I hope to contribute to the ongoing discourse surrounding the urgent need for police reform or abolition, with a particular focus on addressing issues of accountability, lack of diversity, and the negative impacts of our policing system on marginalised communities. So I decided that I needed to understand the problem and break it down into different chunks, and all of the sources for this can be found here on the left. Lack of diversity. So according to the Police Workforce Report published by the UK government in 2022, 91.9% of the UK police force are white. And the absence of diverse perspectives within the police force can perpetuate biases and contribute to the disproportionate targeting and mistreatment of marginalised groups. The next issue is organizational culture within police force. The lack of a strong organization culture within the police force is a significant concern, especially when it comes to addressing and rectifying instances of misconduct. The failure to effectively address misconduct undermines public trust and confidence in the police, which erodes the very foundation of a functioning justice system. Out of 115,235 complaint allegations logged against the UK police between 2021 and 2022, only 347 were actually investigated. And this leads quite nicely to inadequate accountability. So, in instances of misconduct that go unaddressed, these can foster a culture of impunity, which perpetuates a cycle of abuse and undermines accountability. It's crucial to establish a culture within the police force that prioritizes transparency, ethical behavior, and accountability at all levels. Punitive approaches. These tend to prioritize retribution over rehabilitation, leading to a lack of emphasis on addressing root causes. And this provides support for individuals to reintegrate into society or implements preventative measures. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have enough of this. And then the last and probably biggest issue is systemic racism. So, systemic racism within the UK police force remains a deeply rooted and really concerning issue that demands urgent attention. The evidence of racial disparities in policing outcomes, including racial profiling, excessive use of force against minority communities, and biased decision making, is really well documented and it can't be ignored. These systemic biases erode trust between marginalised communities and the police, and this perpetuates a cycle of injustice and inequality. To address systemic racism requires a really comprehensive and proactive approach, which includes diversifying the police force, implementing anti-racist training, establishing independent oversight mechanisms, and holding officers accountable for discriminatory practices. So, after establishing all of this, I decided to speak to the population. I put out a questionnaire, and these are some of the responses I got. I decided that engaging in open, meaningful dialogue with the public as a form of research was a really crucial step towards understanding their concerns and building a general consensus around public view of the UK police force. So I asked different groups of people to speak on their concerns and opinions of our police and policies, and this is what they said. And I also decided to do some just reading around this issue to further understand all the ins and outs. And so I read excerpts from A Critical Theory of Police Power, The Fabrication of the Social Order by Mark Nucleus. And it offers a really thought-provoking analysis of the role of police power in society. And it presents a critical perspective on the nature of police institutions and their impact on shaping social order. And Nucleus investigates the concept of power and its relation to the police, which challenges traditional notions of law enforcement as a neutral and objective force. Instead, the book argues that police power is deeply intertwined with broader structures of power and inequalities within society. The central thesis of this book revolves around the idea that social order itself is constructed and maintained through the exercise of police power, and the ways in which it is deployed to uphold existing power structures, maintain social control, and perpetuate dominant narratives and ideologies. This was actually a really interesting and relevant text in regards to my data walk, and the ideas within it led me to the next step of my research, which was investigating how the police within the UK exert power, including who is exerting it, against whom, and to what extent. So the next step for me was to look at the statistics. Each year, the UK government publishes UK policing statistics and reports, loads of different ones. And after digging around in these reports, I found the police misconduct data table, the police use of force data table, stop and search statistics, and the police workforce data table. And I used the 2021 to 2022 tables, which are the most recent ones available. And I spent a really long time with these tables, extracting all the statistics that I found to be most relevant. And you can find a link to a list of all of them below, where you can check them out. Um, And then I formulated a plan. So when researching for other projects, I found that the data that I find most interesting, understandable, and easily to process is sort of visual, interactive data. And I wanted to find a way to represent the data that I extracted from the UK government data tables into a series of interactive visual representations and statistics. A plan of the work that I intended to make can be seen on the left. So it's like a website view, statistics, text underneath, and then either one long page, or I also thought about scroll arrows as well. And this is just some code snippets of my execution. This is the JS code that I wrote for it. And this is the rest of the code that I wrote. This was just for the structure of the project. And I unfortunately haven't had a chance to host this yet. So the next slide shows just a recorded scroll through of the site. So that was the final product that I've made that I'm yet to host. And then I just thought about expanding this idea a little bit further. So in the future, I would really like to add more elements of interactivity to the project and make it so users can click through the icons, get maybe different blocks of statistics within the larger blocks of icons about officers responsible for the use of force and misconduct, etc. I'd also really like to add a bias switch to the site. This would be a little bit of like a tongue-in-cheek way of presenting the statistics in the non-transparent way the UK government would. So users would be able to choose how they wish to consume or view the statistics, and they could be like slightly skewed or obscured if you check the bias switch. And finally, I would like to gather more statistics and make this a very well-rounded project, because the issue of policing in the UK is a huge, multifaceted one with loads of different angles to consider and many different groups of people that are affected.